Podcast.
Hi, I'm Kaylee. Thank you for tuning into The Intentional Disc Golfer, the only podcast dedicated to helping you become the player you want to be. It is our mission to explore the physical and mental aspects of disc golf performance, to deepen your understanding of the game, and to help you reach your potential. Now, to introduce your hosts, Jenny and Brandon.
Thank you, Kaylee, for that continued wonderful introduction. This is Jenny here with my husband, Brandon.
Hello, everybody.
And this is the Intentional Disc Golfer. We are back after a few weeks of active, deliberate practice on our behalf. If you like, subscribe, or follow us, we have stickers now. So you might be interested in having one of the Intentional Disc Golfer podcast stickers. So let us know and we'll get one to you.
Yeah, find us on Facebook at Saprinsky Disc Golf. That is CZUPRYNSKI Disc Golf. Leave a comment, subscribe to our channel, and we'll be happy to get in touch with you and send you a sticker. Also, we have an email, theintentionaldiscgolfer@gmail.com. That is theintentionaldiscgolfer@gmail.com.
And we also have Instagram now at Saprinsky Disc Golf. You can find us and follow us on Instagram as well. Woohoo for technology.
Woohoo technology. And speaking of technology, we're going to pause for a short break for a word from our sponsor. Hey, Washington. Summer's right around the corner, and you know what that means. It's construction season. Whether you need a repair or remodel for that outdoor living space, or hey, maybe even your indoor living space, give BC Construction a call, 360-271-3441, or email at info@bcconstructionnw.com. Proud sponsor of the Intentional Disc Golfer podcast. And we'd like to shortly remind you that the Intentional Disc Golfer is made possible through our fans and listeners like you. So if you would like to support the show by coming in for an interview or even interested in a sponsorship opportunity, please get a hold of us at that email address. Again, it is theintentionaldiscgolfer@gmail.com.
So to start us off, I think we should go ahead and tell our listeners what we've been up to the past couple of weeks, starting with what was your tournament that you did recently?
My tournament the last tournament that I did was the Honeybee Open.
No? Horseshoe.
Oh yeah, the what is it? The West Sound Invitational.
Yeah.
That was a great tournament. It was fun. It was dry, thank God.
Was it the last one out at Horseshoe?
It was the last tournament that they're supposedly going to hold at Horseshoe. Yeah, so sad to see that course go. 2 courses going bye there. Yeah, nice environment, nice place. I mean, can't say enough good things about it. Shame to see it go.
Yeah, and I partook in the Rippin' in the Roadies this past weekend, put on by Taylor Foth. Another amazing tournament, as she always does. Had a great time up there in the hail, the rain, and the wind. We got to do some belaying with some ropes down the sides of hole 7 and 8, I believe it is, as we normally do.
7 and 8, yep.
So
treacherous.
So we both had a couple of tournaments in our pockets over the past couple of weeks.
And a shout out to Rain Shadow Disc Golf Course up there. That place is amazing. I don't know how it's not like the number 1 course in Washington. It's so cool. And if you hadn't had a chance to get up there, make a pilgrimage up to Sequim, Washington, and play the Rain Shadow Disc Golf Course.
Up in Blinn.
Blinn.
Yeah. So we spent the past couple of weeks working on some deliberate practice. I always want to call it intentional practice.
It's innate practice and deliberate talent is what that was.
Yeah, I always want to call it the wrong thing. So this is our Frankenstein episode.
So Frankenstein was a sum of his parts and were put together selectively and intentionally to create a greater whole.
Wow, you just took that whole thing out. You just crushed it.
Like
Like-
my that circle 2 putt.
My first thought was Aubrey. We got to play with the one junior who made it this past weekend to Rippin' in the Roadies. She's a hoot, and she's the karate disc golfer.
Oh, she is all
she was like,
personality.
"Whoosha!"
Yeah, she's all personality. It was so much fun to play with her, see her play. That was really cool.
Anyway, so why we're going to call this the Frankenstein episode is that if I was to create a Frankenstein creature, it would be very different than the Frankenstein creature that you would create, right, Brandon?
Possibly, because I have, of course, different ulterior motives and different things that I would want to see in an ideal construct.
Right. So Frankenstein is different for each person in a way, right?
Well, everybody's body is a little bit different. Everybody's mindset is a little bit different. Everybody's comfortabilities, range of motion is a little bit different, and also will change over time as you train and become more flexible, stronger, and all of these different things. And incorporating the principles of deliberate practice, that change will become intentional over time.
All right. So to go back to Frankenstein, think of Frankenstein as your disc golf game, Brandon.
My disc golf game.
Your disc golf game.
Okay.
What part of Frankenstein would you build first?
What part of Frankenstein would I build first?
Yeah.
If you saying, okay, so relate this to like parts of the game.
Yeah.
I'd probably build the heart.
Why?
Because great question. I'd probably start with the heart, because the heart is everything. It's, when I talk to the kids, you've been around for many of these fatherly advice speeches, that it's follow your passion, follow what you love doing, and everything else will take care of itself. And it's so true with disc golf too. If you don't love what you're doing, you're not going to go out there and practice. You're not going to go out there and go through the grind and play the tournaments in the rain and hail and snow and all heck breaking loose. You're not going to put up with the obnoxious card mates. You're not going to...
What? There's no such thing as obnoxious card mates.
I know. And also that heart and that engagement also breeds the discipline to go in and work the process and continue learning about it. So I think the heart is the most important part, and that's the part that has to be in place in order for you to go anywhere.
I find that an interesting pick because that's pretty much the last part of Frankenstein that gets working, because they have to shock him to life to get his heart to work. So it's like that's the first thing you would go for, and it's almost the last thing that in the actual monster.
Well, fair enough. I mean, I can see where you're going with that.
Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to get at with how is Frankenstein related to disc golf?
But but like Frankenstein, much like your body, I mean, there's two parts of the body that your entire body is based around, and that is the heart and the brain. Everything else is a subsystem of that, pretty much.
Right.
So I would start with the heart, and then I would bring in the brain, and I'd build the rest of the monster around it, because I have the heart, which keeps me going, and then I have the brain that keeps me learning and is my storage system, so that I can grow and grow and grow. So I guess heart is the passion and brain is the growth.
All right, I'm going to challenge you a little bit more with the Frankenstein question.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, so remember those books where it was like you get to choose the animal head, the animal like torso, and then like the animal legs? You know what I'm talking about? It was like the flip book, and it was like a cow, a donkey, and a horse. Okay. So you get the head, the torso, and then the legs.
Okay.
Build your perfect disc golfer.
Build my perfect disc golfer.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Like just physique and mechanical wise, or I mean, well,
I'm challenging you with what you've watched.
I just, we watch a lot of the pros and things, and it's good to see,
It can even be people that we know.
and people that we know. I mean, what is the perfect disc golfer? Because we've seen all types. I mean, we were watching the tour, and there's that guy on there that looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he looks like he just came out of the gym and went to the course. Like, he's huge.
Do you remember that one video we watched where it was like 4 guys? I think they were all from like Innova or something.
Yeah.
And they were all trying to show how to do the distance drive.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so there's the nerd, there's the guy who missed leg day, there's this and that. And it's totally
that was hilarious. It was from Discraft. They're all Discraft.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think his name is Ezra. Is that his name? Something like that.
The one that you said was the Arnold
Yeah,
Schwarzenegger.
the guy looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? He's just freaking ripped. And of course he's in the long drive competition, but then you take someone like that. And then I go to the opposite of that, and someone that we know who's like, one of the smaller in stature people that I've ever seen is like Danielle, and she's a professional, and she can outdrive me by a mile.
Yeah,
and it's like, okay, I'm a big guy. Like, I'm not necessarily slouching on the muscle. I'm not some skinny little thing. I should be able to huck a disc. And she can outdrive me. And I probably got 120 pounds on her.
Yeah. Easily.
Like, easily. Or like, take, for example, Gannon Burr. Gannon Burr is one of the biggest throwers, and he's just this scrawny little lanky kid. The one thing I have noticed about every single professional disc golfer is that from the waist down, they are absolutely ripped. Like, their legs are, their quads, everything below the waist is just toned and strong. And
I'm going to jump in on that and say disc golfing in Washington, especially this spring, you wouldn't know that. Especially the women, because they're all wearing like their mountain
like
snow
pants.
pants,
Yeah.
and you have no idea.
But yeah, there's a lot of layers.
Yeah, there are.
It's like an onion. Yeah, so I mean, I really don't think there is a perfect disc golfer.
It was a challenge for you. Like, you're not going to get out of it. Try.
Oh, come on.
No, lovely speech. You still got to answer the question.
Like skill or like physique?
I don't know. It's your Frankenstein. Build your perfect disc golfer.
Build my perfect disc golfer, huh? I think it'd be somebody that had probably good arm length to be able to put together that whipping action and get a lot of nice like torque on the disc. Upper body probably should be fairly fit and toned, but being super huge like Arnold Schwarzenegger is not necessary. The lower half, however, it should definitely be worked on and have some muscle mass.
So pick someone.
I
Pick
don't know.
Okay, so here, let me give you an example.
I feel like really backed into a corner right
Good.
now. Okay.
This is good for you. Flipping the tables. All right, so this would be my example
Taking
of
flipping tables, that freaking guy. Like,
Yeah,
this
right.
is
Okay.
Huge. Huge.
All right. So if I was to pick a perfect disc golfer, I'm going to go off of the people that I've played with recently. So for the mindset, the head part.
The head game. Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to go with Kayla because Kayla cracks me up. She can have the worst shots ever, and it is hilarious, and it really doesn't affect her game.
Whenever we play with Kayla, I haven't actually like played with her. She's been on your card, and I've been caddy guy.
Right.
But whenever we play with her, I'm always dying laughing by the end of the round.
Yeah, she cracks me up.
It's she is so funny.
And it was the first throw, ripping in the roadies. I want to say she throws it, hits a tree, and before that, she's like, "Don't you dare hit the tree." So I would go with Kayla for that part. And then I was thinking for like the upper body throw, I got a chance to see Allison play when we were backed
Allison...
up. Mabbitt.
Oh, Prescott's wife?
Yeah.
Okay.
Shout out to Allison and Prescott. Hi, guys.
Yeah, they're great people.
But Allison, watching her, you're talking about how the pros, they don't throw what you would consider to be the typical line. It's this like 45-degree corner. There's a Mando, and she just shot that straight up and over all the trees. Like, these are big trees. We live in Washington. Shot it over the big trees and landed in.
In stature-wise, Allison is not the biggest person either.
Yeah. Her and Danielle did the same thing just about.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would have expected to see that from Jennifer, who was the bigger lady in that group, because she has more of the like muscular build.
Yeah.
But she took a different line and didn't even try and go over the top.
A little safer route type of thing.
Yeah.
So
and
it takes all types.
And then for the legs part, I would say Melissa, because she has been focusing on just having that flat, that very stable line, and then
like a solid base.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're talking from like a technical standpoint, like who has the best technique?
You can build your Frankenstein however you want.
Okay.
So that was mine.
Well, I think from like physical stature, I think the Arnold Schwarzenegger dude is probably the guy that I would pick, and then I'd take Gannon Burr's arms or Ricky Wysaki's arms and stick him on that guy, right?
But then you wouldn't be the Arnold Schwarzenegger guy anymore.
See, like I remember when I was playing when I was playing professional sports, depending on what position you're playing, you didn't want to bulk up like that because it will actually inhibit your range of motion. I feel like the guy's arms are way too big for the sport, and it actually creates another fulcrum in his elbow that can cause his elbow to separate. So he's going to have to compensate for that somehow, and that's going to affect his throw and how much spin and torque that he's going to put on it and in how he throws. So I don't feel like that's the ideal situation maybe for the arms, but for the rest of the body, the guy's buff. Like, he's in great shape. He's incredibly muscular, incredibly, low body fat and efficient.
Okay. You're spending an awful lot of time talking about this one guy.
Well, the guy has a great physique.
You would take that baseball player and make him play disc golf.
Which baseball player? That
one that can like do everything. That one guy.
Shohei Ohtani?
Yeah, that guy.
Oh, dude, that guy's my baseball crush. I mean, just talk about Shohei. Yeah, I want to build the Shohei Ohtani of disc golf. Like, for example, if you guys don't know who we're talking about, he plays for the Angels. This guy came over from Japan. He's like, I don't know exactly how tall he is, but he's tall. He's like 6'4", 6'6", something. He's tall, right? The guy got a great physique, great range of motion. Fantastic mentality and attitude. He can go out on the pitching mound and throw 7 innings and then get behind the plate and belt a couple home runs.
And isn't he ambidextrous?
No, I don't think he's ambidextrous. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. But the thing is that a pitcher is not supposed to be able to do that. Go out and strike out 10 guys and then go hit 2 home runs in a game. Like, that's unheard of. The guy is a generational talent.
Okay, we get it.
Yeah, I mean, he's really the perfect Frankenstein for baseball. So who's my Shohei Ohtani of disc golf?
No, I was saying you would just take him and make him play disc golf.
Maybe.
But then it's not Frankenstein. If you just take someone the way that they are, then it's not Frankenstein anymore.
Well, but maybe that lends to something a whole lot better than Frankenstein.
Oh gosh.
I mean, maybe it takes the idea of, hey, you can be your own monster. You can put all these different pieces and parts together for yourself and create something that is functional and effective.
Well, and that's the entire idea behind this podcast, is for us to get to that point where we realize that, you know what, we can watch these Arnold Schwarzenegger guys and the way that they play. And that's their game. It's not our game. We can glean little bits and pieces from watching them. And like you and I, we watch a lot of the same YouTube videos to try and get better at putting or driving or whatever it is. And we each pull something different from those videos. And so what I need to be a good disc golfer is not the same as what you need to be a good disc golfer.
Well, like, for example, I watched this great documentary a while ago on, I believe it was Greg Norman, the ball golfer. And he was tearing it up. Like, he was winning major championships and all sorts of tournaments and stuff. And he actually, like, got out of ball golfing for a while. And then it came up to the one they have at St. Andy's, the one in Ireland. We just saw a thing on it. I forget what it is. Anyway, it's a major championship at St. Andy's over in Ireland, the birthplace of ball golf, and in many ways, kind of the birthplace of disc golf, because that's where golf was born.
Isn't it St. Andrews?
St. Andrews, yeah.
Not St. Andy's.
Well, slang, golfer terms, no. But anyway, no, he was out of the game for a while and out of shape and all, and then this big tournament came up, which only comes up every so often, over at St. Andrews, and he enters it, and he's like, well, I see all the young guys on tour and they're doing this and they're very, very accustomed to American style golf, as where he's an old champion, has that experience and that wisdom, maybe not the power, maybe not the flexibility and things that he used to have. However, he had the wisdom and the experience to go out on an old school links course, and he actually won the championship, that tournament, against the likes of, some of these other major, young talents that were coming up and winning all these tournaments. And that's because you don't have to be the longest driver. You don't have to be the strongest. You just have to play your game, and you have to play it well. And that was kind of a long way to get there, but Jenny, there was a point to that, is that, the best game that you can play is your game.
Yep.
And that's how you're going to be most effective, and that's how you're going to win tournaments.
Yep. If I try and play someone else's game, which I have done, I won't lie, being in a competition, it's like, what's going wrong? It's like, oh, well, that's working for them. Well, I'm going to try that. Yeah, that didn't work.
Well, that's my biggest problem in tournaments, is that I get with a group of fellas, and they're all out driving me. They're all playing substantially better than me. I always get stuck on the card with the guys that finish like first and second, even though I suck.
It's a sign from the universe
that
you should be playing with the first place people.
However, it's like I see them out driving me. I see them hitting these impossible lines. I see them doing these great like layup shots, sinking these big putts, and that puts me in the mindset of, oh, I have to do that too. And then when I start trying to do that, that is well beyond my skill level at this point, and I end up screwing up, and I end up getting myself into trouble.
Well, I want to say the biggest example that we had of that was playing with the two kids when we were doing league at Freddy's. Mm-hmm. And they were just throwing these crazy bomber shots that are just like up and over everything. It's like, at that point for me, I was like, how can you go that way? Like, the line is this way. You have to follow the line. It's like, well, no, you don't. It just has to go improve your lie. Oh, so you can go over all the trees. It's just more like a hope and a prayer. But for those teenage boys with those arms, like, it just...
Yeah, you come into this, like, I feel like you get when you're playing on your own or with the same group of people for a while, you can tend to get this, like, tunnel vision of like, this is the way that the course is supposed to be played. And then you play with a different set of people and they do it a completely different way. Mm-hmm. And it just blows your mind, and it kind of like brings me back to the very, very raw side of the rules, is that you must propel your disc in an effort to improve your lie. It doesn't matter how you improve it. It's not even if you improve it, because sometimes you hit a tree and go backwards. It's in an effort to improve your lie. And that doesn't mean that you have to play the fairway the way it's going to be. Like Allison and Danielle, for example, throwing those huge Anheuser bombs over the trees and landing like 3/4 of the way down the fairway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
Well, I started doing that recently just as an experiment, and both times that I've done it have turned my lie and position has been significantly better than the traditional way that I've played. Even though I'm back in the woods a little bit, I'm still halfway through the stupid tunnel and have a better look at the basket.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was doing today with my Roadrunner, was trying to throw it in a different way, and it panned out pretty good to throw that disc differently.
Yeah, that was a heck of an idea. Like I was trying to figure out like what are you gonna, and then you pulled out your Roadrunner. I'm like, that's genius. Using that speed advantage or disadvantage to be able to shape the shot the way you wanted it to. Mm-hmm. That was really smart.
Yeah, and it worked out.
Yeah.
So anyways, back to why is this the Frankenstein episode?
We'll get to it eventually.
Whoa, so
we'll figure it out eventually.
Jesus. Frankenstein is a collection of parts that were found, that were available, and that worked for the intended purpose. And we are a conglomerate of all the information that we've learned, the skills that we practice, the things that we do on a regular basis. So we are our own experiment. And that was the point of this episode, is that as disc golfers, everybody's game is different, and it's not a team sport. It can be. However, it's more like a relay race than, say, a soccer team. Because in a relay race, you put your fastest person in these certain places. Your person who's, you can rely on is in this place. And so it's more of a relay team than a soccer team.
Well, even in team sports, I mean, that's what my background has been with team sports, is you still want to be the strongest individual player that you can possibly be, because the team is relying on you to do that. And, it was, like, you don't want to be the pitcher that gives up the home run in the 9th inning. Right. You don't want to be the guy that fumbles the ball on the 1-yard line. In the same in disc golf, you don't want to be the one that, if you're playing team golf, which is a thing, or dubs or something, you don't want to be the one that misses that 10-foot putt to win the card.
Well, but for the most part, disc golf, like, we don't see a lot of the team sport. It's more the singles tournaments that we see.
That we do.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that we do, but there are still team-based events out there. Right,
there are. However, where we live, what we see, the majority of it, the mainstream stuff, is the singles.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about being a amalgamation of all the different parts, and we hope that the intentional disc golfer will become one of those parts for you, and something that you can rely on, and a quality entertainment and broadcast piece.
Totally cut that part out. So what I was saying, this is your snap sign. Cut it out.
Snap sign.
So what I was trying to get at is, so it's mostly singles. So you need to take the time to figure out what works for you, what works for your game, and what parts you need to change. And you could be at a point in your game where everything seems to be working well. So maybe you decide, I want to try a new disc, or I want to try new shoes, or I want to try a new shot shape. And those are all things that you can decide to make minute changes that don't make a huge impact on your game. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Depends on how you decide to use that information that you gain from doing those tests.
Well, that's one of the things with golf, though, is that even the minute changes have big outcomes. And I think that's what people appreciate it. And another thing that, I'm thinking about this here is that there is no real ceiling to the skills in golf. And that's part of the allure to it, is that you can keep going and going and going and going until you have the elusive, you're acing every single hole. Well, that's never been done, and maybe it never will. Who knows? But there isn't really no performance ceiling to golf, and that's one of the cool things about it, I think, is the sky's the limit.
Have you heard of the glitch?
The glitch. Oh, that disc. It does some of the craziest things.
Yeah. So anyways, so thinking of the scientific method, science teacher here.
Science teacher.
Yeah. So you have to have a control and then you have whatever it is that you change. So I strongly recommend that you don't change everything at once, because if you change your walk up, your throw, your angle, your disc, your shoes, your nails, everything, like you change it all at once, you have no idea what made the difference.
Well,
so I recommend changing one thing at a time, getting some information from that change, and then see what happens.
Well, we were watching that Trash Panda guy, and he was trying to change his.
When he was putting and he was trying like the top 10
No, that's
tips he
not
got
what it
from.
was. It was he was trying to adjust his form to try to throw flatter and straighter. Because he was talking about how he always used to throw hyzer flips, and that was his thing. He was, I'm gonna throw a hyzer flip, and every shot I throw is gonna be either a hyzer bomb, hyzer bend, hyzer flip, hyzer, and then he went online and did some research and found 5 or 6 different things that he could do to be able to throw flatter and straighter, and he decided to work on one of them each day for 7 days. And then the last day he went out and played around with what he figured out. And by day 3 or 4, he was having troubles keeping all that information straight and being able to incorporate all of the elements of what he had learned.
Right. So he was changing one thing and then adding on another change and adding on another change, which is what you recommended to me as well. And he put it really well in that video. And I think that's where it finally made sense to you, where I'm like, hey, I'm on information overload. I can't remember the walk up, put my foot here, do that, turn my hip, throw the disc. Because it was information overload.
Yeah, he was good for 2 or 3 days. And then in day 4 or 3.5 or something, he was like, I'm having trouble, trying to put everything together. And that was, I guess, his learning barrier, is that he had to incorporate, or he had to assimilate all those different things before he could move on to the next thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I recommend, is you only do a few things at a time. I thought you were talking about the episode where he was putting, because that's the one where it clicked for me, is he took, like you said, research, got 10 tips, and he did 10 to 50 throws using whatever that tip was, and tried a different tip and just kept doing the different throws to see if anything actually made a difference. And that's another way to collect information, is to be, the only thing that he changed is whatever that tip was with his putting. So everything else he kept the same, and that's how he was able to do the 1-2, where you look at it for only really quick and then throw. And that was the tip that hit for me too.
As an athletic coach and as a personal trainer, the body is so interconnected that it's really difficult to just do one thing, because it's connected to this thing and this thing and this thing, and all these pieces have to fit together. And if they don't fit together just right, then the whole system is going to break down and not work right.
I think that's overcomplicating it, to be honest, for me.
Well, no, and that's just my gut feeling, because if you, let's say, for example, we've been working on your stationary throws. We kind of started back at the basics.
I was going to actually say that, the other thing is that sometimes you just get to a point where nothing's working, and so you just completely push the reset button, which is you can start over and try and go back to not really knowing anything and just trying to rework everything that you've done. And that works for some people. But for the most part, if you already have a lot working for you in your game, just change a few little things at a time.
Yeah, a few little things at a time. One of the pitfalls of being self-taught is you create some bad habits early on, and you get comfortable with those bad habits. And then when you get to this point where you want to progress and get better, you have to go back and unlearn those bad habits. So whatever you do to overlap or eliminate that bad habit, it's always going to feel unnatural and uncomfortable to you for a very, very long time, it'll become easier and easier, but you will still have that.
It's on the upper end of your zone of proximal development. That's where it's getting to the point of discomfort. As long as it gets to the point of where you don't feel like you have to stop because you're so frustrated and overwhelmed, that means that you've gone past what you're ready for.
So anyway, you were talking about...
I was talking about, well...
We keep going off on these great tangents, and it's awesome conversation.
Okay, so...
Your scientific method you were talking about.
Yeah, we were talking about me.
About you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about you.
Oh my goodness. So we were talking about that. So part of the deliberate practice, I will get that word right one of these days.
We'll figure it out. We'll be fine.
The deliberate practice is this past week was spring break, so we had a lot of extra time to play, and we followed Paul's advice of play every day. And we did. We played 7 out of 8 days actually out on the course, either just us or with the kids.
Well, so in addition to being out on the course, we also did practice here at home.
And that's what I was going to get at, is that the week before, we started doing a lot more deliberate practice with actually going out and doing field work. And because my putting league started, so I've been doing the putting league practice and getting the kids involved on that too. So there's a little at-home competition. But with my game, I don't even remember when we decided to start changing things. Oh, it was the hand thing. And so you're like, I saw this guy on there. And when he did his reach back, the disc was flat, like straight up and down, so that when he pulled through, it was closer to his chest.
It was Gannon Burr.
Okay. You never told me who it was.
Gannon Burr was doing what taught that.
Okay. So anyways, you're like, try this, because we met out at the field. And so I tried that. And that was one of the first times I was able to get the disc like closer and able to drive better, because I was finally able to get some reach through and closer to the body and able to stay on my line a little bit better.
Well, no, I remember this a lot. I want to, if you allow me, I'll go back further. You were playing, I can't remember if it was a tournament.
It was a honeybee.
It was a honeybee.
Mm-hmm.
It was at the honeybee, and it, aside from the weather being a challenging aspect, you were just eating your lunch. Like, you were getting your lunch handed to you in a bad way. I was going to
say, all of your bad things have to do with lunch.
I know. I'm a lunch
is lunch
guy.
bad for you? Like,
no.
Lunch is a bad thing.
No, you were getting handed your lunch.
Yeah, I get it. Everyone gets it. I was playing bad. Playing poorly.
Well, it wasn't even bad. It was the worst you've ever done on any round ever.
No, it wasn't.
It was.
Nuh-uh.
You were, what, 20 or 30 over at NAD?
It was still better than when I started.
It was way better than when you started.
There you go.
Okay.
And I even improved at Rain Shadow by 9 points.
You did.
From last year.
Okay, so let's rewind a little bit. Let's start this story over. You were playing at the Honeybee Open, and I remember this because it was for me. Nothing was going right. You made it through the tournament. You still did better than you had before. You improved a little bit. You hadn't been progressing and moving forward as fast and as intentionally as you wanted to.
Yeah, I kind of hit a slump since the July.
Yeah, like a batter hits a slump. Jenny has been on a quite a bit of a slump, and she's not.
At least in tournaments.
Well, and part of that's diminishing returns too, and we're gonna talk about that in a later episode. Is the law of diminishing returns is it's called beginner's luck, is another word for it. So when you first start an activity, your ability to improve how do you explain this?
It's the learning curve that when you start to learn something, you learn it quickly, and then it takes a while to learn anything after that.
However, the ceiling for the amount of stuff that you can learn, the capacity for the amount of stuff that you can learn becomes smaller and smaller and smaller as you learn more. So as you learn a new skill, as you keep progressing, you go from progressing 10 shots at a time to progressing 3 or 4. And then when you get really good, it's to progressing, 4, 3, 2, and then you're going to stay kind of in that 2 to 1, 1 or 2 shot zone as you become very proficient. But it's diminishing returns, is that the better you get, the less room for growth you're going to have.
Yeah, it's like the kids in
What?
students when you test them, the kids that are really good at, say, math, like they're not going to learn as much from you as the kids that are really awful at math because they have more ability to grow.
Yeah. Or
why I like working with the kids that need interventions.
Yeah, or think of like a glass full of water. If you have a glass with some water in it and it's only got a little bit of water in it, there's a lot more space you can fill there as opposed to a glass that's already 3/4 of the way full. You can still fill some space, but it's not going to hold as much volume as the previous glass. Well, so Jenny was getting her butt kicked at this tournament, and she hadn't been progressing. She'd played several practice rounds, several tournaments before that, and had not been progressing on the trajectory that she's been wanting to progress in. And this was the one where she finally snapped and said, "Okay, I'll listen." Because I've tried to coach her before, and it's been just,
it was utter desperation.
It's
that's
been
what
it,
that
it,
moment
it was utter desperation.
Oh, that's
she
why I blacked it out.
She finally gave up and gave in and was like, "Okay,
I'll listen.
Help me." Because obviously there's something working for you that's not working for me, and I need to tap into that.
Yep, I remember that moment.
It takes a great deal of humility to be able to let a coach or an instructor trust them implicitly to make changes to your different techniques and things. And for some people, it's very personal because it's their body. It's the way they learned how to do things. They're attached. There's a lot of emotional attachment to it.
Well, it's not even just that. It's automatic defensiveness because you're going in that place of, okay, what's wrong with me? Like, fix what's wrong, and then seeing all the things that are wrong. Like, that's part of it. But the other thing, I don't know which part is harder to do. If it's harder to be humble and let a coach help you, or if it's harder to videotape yourself and then critique yourself and make those changes. Because I've had to do that one with teaching. That's part of getting your national boards is you have to videotape yourself and critique your teaching. And it's known as the hardest thing in the world to do. It's like the thing that makes you not want to be a teacher again. So going through that, like I haven't been able to bring myself to do that with disc golf.
And where does that knowledge come from?
What knowledge?
That knowledge of what to do and how to get better. Where does that come from?
Experience. And
whose experience? Oh, I guess
anyone. Anyone's experience. I guess depends on what you hear. Depends on what you watch. Depends on what you look for. Like I'm saying is that there's a couple ways you can go about it. If you have someone that you can have coach you, you can get help from them and have them coach you. But if you don't, you can videotape yourself and look at things that you notice either inconsistencies or things that you think go well, and it all comes down to researching other things.
Okay, you're getting closer to what I'm getting towards. Where does that knowledge come from?
God.
It doesn't come from God. Well, maybe. But
I was channeling James.
Sorry. If that's, I mean,
the disc golf gods, the squirrels.
If that's your thing, no, it's everybody has learned from the person that came before them. There's a saying that there are no original ideas. We have only just stood on the shoulders of giants before us. So your knowledge, when you go and critique yourself in the video, let's say you've never taken a disc golf lesson, never taken an ounce of instruction, never watched any kind of YouTube videos on it, and then you videotape yourself throwing a disc, trying to critique yourself. How do you know what to look for? How do you know what you're looking for? How do you know what's correct and incorrect? You have to have some sort of information gain before that. And that has to come from somebody that has done it before you. And that's what coaching is just a study of best practice, and a coach will help you adapt that best practice to something that works for you.
Right, but not everyone is equipped with the ability to have a live-in coach or listen to the live-in coach that they're married to. So there are other things you can do.
There are other things you can do. And that kind of leads on an important point about, coaching. A lot of coaches are very like, no, this is how you do it. This is how, it's done. You have to do it this way because this is how this guy does it or whatever. As far as coaching goes, I don't subscribe to that. I say, if it doesn't work for you, change it. If it doesn't work for you, let's catch the fundamental points and let's adapt it to something that will work for you. Because the most important thing is that the disc goes from the tee pad to the basket in the fewest strokes possible. That's the most important thing. I don't care how it gets there. It just needs to get there in as few strokes possible.
Well, and that's where we could go into collecting data with the strokes, because there's actually, just because you make it in less strokes doesn't mean that you've really learned anything. And that can kind of be a vanity metric. Like your number of birdies is a vanity metric.
Well, you could just be having a good day that day.
Yeah, it doesn't really tell you anything. It's just you made it in one less stroke than what is par.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of data. Jenny being math teacher and also kind of a statistician in herself, she is the data guru.
If you really like data, I read on my Kindle, it was a disc golf data, Becoming a Better Disc Golfer by Chris Bodden. There were so many different things that you could quantify that were things that, like knowing that if you go look for a lost disc, yours, someone else's, how does that affect your next throw? And so like today, you threw your fire flower.
Oh, God.
Yep, that one. And I was like, okay, we need to look for it, but I want to finish this hole before we go look for it, because I knew that was going to affect my next throw.
Which was a smart tactical play on your part. That was very smart.
And that's because I know that my tendency is, okay, if I can, I'm going to say, hey, can I do this next throw? Like in a tournament, it's like, can I do this next throw? And then I'll come help you. And so that way I can finish this up and then get in that mindset and prepare myself for that next throw.
Yeah, and I got to talk about that shot. It was hilarious. So we're out at NAD doing a practice round, and it is just pouring down rain. We're like the only people on the course at this point.
Yeah.
And my disc was so wet and slippery. I've been having trouble with my sidearm lately. Still am having trouble with my sidearm. And this thing came out of my hand like a lame duck, like a duck with one wing, and it flew off to the side and was nose up and sideways and disappeared into a bush.
And I'm going to say the awful part is that it's the other side of the hole where there was the dead owl last week.
It was so bad that I had to laugh at it.
You're like, this one's coming out of the bag.
This might be coming out of the bag. I don't know. You're in timeout, disc. Yeah. So.
But there are so many different things that you can get data from. One that I really want to do that I haven't taken the time to do is to look at the terciles on the basket when you're putting.
Terciles.
Yeah. So you have the, imagine your basket. And you're going to cut it into thirds. So you have the basket and the middle. And so there's like 9 boxes.
Oh, like that tic-tac-toe thing you did.
Yes, that's it.
Okay.
The tic-tac-toe thing. And trying to figure out when you're putting, where are you missing?
So what's the tic-tac-toe thing? Can you explain that to our listeners?
So imagine a tic-tac-toe board, and you put it up against your disc golf basket, and it's like the top of it is what's the top called?
The collar?
Yeah, the top of it is the collar. The bottom of it's the basket.
The top of the basket? Or
And
the
then
bottom
like
of the basket?
the sides. So you split it so there's above the collar, middle, and then below the basket. And then to the left and right are the sides of the basket. So when you're putting, there's a grid of 9 boxes. And where are you missing? Are you hitting the collar like at the very top, in the middle? Are you going? I tend to miss it on the right, kind of in that above the collar. That's where I miss a lot, is up there to the right.
The upper right quadrant. Not even,
Tercile.
the upper right tercile.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's a grid of
it's the
9.
tic-tac-toe board. So the middle third would be like the middle third, the third of the basket, but then like the outside thirds on the right and left would actually cover a small area outside of the basket.
Yeah.
So that you can track your misses as well.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And then likewise,
I just saw a light bulb come.
I know, light bulb. So then likewise, going on the horizontal is that you would, okay.
It's like how you keep hitting the collar. Like you could collect that data.
I keep hitting the collar because my disc is too light. Because I got stronger and now my light putter is too light. And so,
and also because I've been doing a lot. When I have been missing, now I'm hitting the basket more than I was before. Like in our games that we play.
well, your putting has really come along nicely.
I appreciate that.
Honestly.
But what I'm saying is that's one thing that I really want to be able to do. I just haven't taken the time to do that.
Just creating a map. Well, I want to go back to something I was going to ask you. You mentioned something called vanity metrics, and it bounced me back to what we closed the last episode with, is the quote from Einstein, is that you can't always measure the things that matter.
So in the book, the disc golf data book, he talks about roughly five different types of metrics. So there's vanity metrics, equipment metrics, practice metrics, course metrics, and then he goes specifically into putting as a separate data points entirely. So vanity metrics is a metric that makes you look good, but does not correlate to lower scores or provide actionable insights.
So would you say that like my end of the day round score is not necessarily viable feedback?
I'm going to say, so we've started because we use UDisc and we score every round that we play. I don't think we've played a single round we haven't scored since we started.
Since we started scoring them, no, we've scored and kept data on it.
Yeah.
Every one, as much as possible anyway.
Right. But we've started using the part of UDisc where you can actually measure your throws. And I think that data, once we get more and it's a little more accurate, because with the phones and where we play, it's not necessarily accurate, but I think we'll get better data from that of what discs are we throwing well with accuracy versus just the fact that our scores are going up or down.
Yeah, so the end of the day score, if you were going to use that as a metric, you're going to have to, it's not specific enough to really spit out, well, how did I get there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then equipment metrics, obviously metrics that measure and focus on your equipment rather than your performance. So that would be how, if you're one of those people that kind of plays your own like single best shot, or maybe you throw 2, 3, maybe every disc in your bag on a drive just to see what it does and then decide which one is the best one, like that would be an example of equipment metrics.
Okay, so like that one time when I was out practicing putting with that box full of putters that we have, and I was like, I should really keep track of how often each individual putter goes into the basket, because I might be putting with the wrong putter.
Yeah, I'm pretty bummed when I'm practicing putting and my main putters aren't the ones in the basket.
Yeah.
And that's why actually with the putting league, I went down to 10 specific discs. And those are the main 10 that I use for putting league.
Yeah.
Because they're 10 that I would be more inclined to put in my bag.
Like today, I found out that my Envy is not very effective in the rain. I better switch to my Nomad.
Your Envy's in trouble.
My Envy is in timeout. It was not.
And then you threw mine and it rolled a heck of a long way.
That's what happens
away.
with your discs, is they hit the collar and they roll out.
Said my discs and my dice are cursed. I need to sage them.
Yeah, you smudge our bags before next tournament.
Yeah, if they dry.
Yeah. With as wet as it was out there today, it's going to be a week before any of that stuff's dry.
Well, and that's also why we bought the black hole basket.
Which one?
For putting league.
Yeah.
You convinced me that I needed to get a black hole basket because we have a marksman, which you won at Ladies of the Lake.
Yay.
You won the marksman.
There were so many people that were ticked about that.
I know. It was the only thing that we won.
I know.
And then we have the basket from Costco. And I was going to putt on the marksman. And you're like, no, it's going to be a huge disadvantage for putting league. So that's, again, a part of the equipment metrics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you say equipment, the difference between the baskets. I've been practicing almost exclusively on the marksman from distances ranging from 20 feet to 32 feet. And then I've been going at it, sinking between 100 and 200 putts a day. Absolutely, trying to do that almost every day. Sometimes I don't make it, but then I switched to a regulation size basket, and it has made a heck of a difference. I would say that my putting percentages and my confidence level has gone up substantially. I'm starting to hit things from edge of circle and even circle 2 on a regular basis. So that would be an example of how equipment would affect your performance.
Right. If everything else stays the same,
yeah,
then that's the equipment.
There you go.
And like for me, I could even go as far as to say that like today having to play in the rain with all my rain gear, that gave me some equipment metrics because I'm layered in 5 layers of gear trying to stay dry. So that was an equipment metrics for me. And then there's practice metrics. So metrics constructed from data gathered during practice repetitions or casual rounds. So with the putting league, I have that little book that I'm keeping track of all my practices and trying to get 100 from these 2 places and then 50 and 25.
Well, that's a fantastic thing because you're being forced to keep data on yourself from these different distances.
Not really. Like for the actual league, I only have to do 10 putts from each of those distances and keep track of that. What I'm trying to do is because I'm in round C of the virtual women's putting league that's put on by Tracy Hurd, I believe. She does that. So we just started the spring round. So I have to do 10 and 15 foot. And I tried to get 10 I use for my warm-ups. I got like 20 in there, and then I move on to 15 because I have problems at 15. And so my goal this week was to do 100. So I had to throw 210 putts to make 100, which was not a very good.
About 50%.
It was like 46%.
A little lower than 50. But.
Yeah. And then I was going to go try and get 50 from 20. But at that point, I was really tired because I'd already putted for an hour. And then I was going to try and get 25 throws from 25 feet.
Well, that's what I'm saying is that the putting league, because you have to track how many shots you make from each distance, you can then, after a few weeks, put that data together and say, okay, I know that I have this much of a percentage from
And
this.
that's what Tracy does, is she puts it all in an Excel spreadsheet. She has the bars, she has all the data. Like, it's really great to get that data. However, for me, it's such a small percentage. Like 10 shots. It's like, think of those tests that you took in high school.
Yeah.
Like the 50-point tests, you can get like 5-10 wrong and still pass. If you have a 10-point test and you get 5 wrong, you fail. So it's such a small snapshot for me.
Yeah, but as time goes on, that snapshot gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to get at.
But if it's still just 10 and I suck those 10, like, it's not a very good part of the picture. Anyways.
Okay.
Yeah. And then course metrics. Metrics constructed from data during scored rounds, which we've started, at least for me, I have it on UDisc 2 because the PDGA live scoring doesn't connect to UDisc, which it should somehow.
PDGA,
And
UDisc need to get together somehow.
Connect.
Yeah.
I will pay an extra $5 a month or a year
to be able to do that.
to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Like, it can be your Pro Plus plan.
Well, and you want your Pro Plus plan with PDGA connectivity. You watch like the Jomez and all those guys, and it's like they have the stats up there from UDisc on the thing, and it's like, why don't they just marry the two so that they can dial up everything right in one spot? I'm sure it involves money.
Yeah. So anyways, course metrics, we gather a lot of data when we're out there doing our scored rounds because, like I said, that's just our routine. And I do have some creative ways to mark whether it's a natural par or a modified par based on my...
I was thinking about this. Is like, I want to see the metric of my end of round score as a ratio to how many trees I hit during the round.
So you just track that?
Well, yeah, that would be something that I could track.
Yeah, you should. Totally.
However, I should track that, actually.
However, like if you're going to do that for North Bend where there's just a straight row of trees versus Rain Shadow where you're actually in a forest, like it's like you're probably going to hit more trees at North Bend if we're being completely honest, because you and I have a tendency, if we're in a course that's open, we find the trees.
If there's a tree there, we will find it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So going into some things to consider about putting. Putting percentage by distance.
Well, putting's an easy one to pick on because it's definitely the most important part of the game.
So putting percentage by distance, your miss location, and the putting terciles. And then frequency by disc. So we talked about all of those.
Yeah, frequency by disc.
Anyway, so what I think with collecting data, part of why I like data is it gives you something concrete to actually form an opinion based on. So instead of being like our daughter Aaliyah, who's I just felt like throwing that disc and I'm going to throw left-handed just because it just feels right. It takes away that, it just feels right. And that kind of like witchcrafty feeling of which disc to throw. And actually gives you some real concrete data of, okay, I have to throw my pearl for every shot because it's my most reliable disc and I can throw it just about any single way that I need to. Like I could take all the other discs out and just throw that one and be fine.
Yeah, for the most part.
I know.
I mean, you have your pearl and the rest of your discs are utility discs.
Pretty much.
Yeah, they're there to just...
Aside from my putter.
For special shots, basically.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of data. Both as a dad, as a coach, as just a person. I love data. And the reason is because data can be tested, it can be recreated, it can stand up to scrutiny, and it drives me crazy because we see this in all of our everyday lives, is that there's always that person where it's like, well, I know what the odds are, but I'm going to buck them anyway. And
every time you go up there and you're like, I'm going to try something.
Every time I visit,
I've got an idea.
I've got an idea. I'm not going to do the thing that makes sense.
I'm going to try something.
I'm going to try that ridiculous line that even the pros can't hit because I just yeah. I'm learning.
Everyone else is
avoid
stupid except me.
Everybody. I'm smarter than everyone else. No, not really. Data isn't going to give you the whole story. However, it's going to give you a fairly good idea and be correct most of the time. Let's say that you are 40 feet out. You're 40 feet out. You have a clear line to the basket.
Which hole on which course are you imagining?
Let's say
Which hole on which course are you imagining?
Well, let's just say that it's let's say we're at Battle Point, right, where it's just flat and open,
and there's geese.
Sure. Let's just random basket X.
Okay.
Flat ground. You're 40 feet out from it, and you know that your success rate from 40 feet out is about 20%. You're in this tournament. You got to decide what to do. Do you run this thing?
40 feet out, I wouldn't run it. I would lay up on the right side.
Why?
Because I know I can.
So you weigh your odds, is what you're saying. Is that you know that if you...
Well, that's why I even asked which course and what's the weather like. Because, like, if you're talking about 7 or 8 at Rain Shadow, which is kind of where my head's at these days, where it's that lane of grass and then the muddy hills on the sides, like, I can't even, like, I'm scared to even throw a disc 10 feet in front of me.
That hole is
because it
intimidating.
rolls.
That hole is intimidating.
It's such a mind-boggling experience.
It's almost an island hole because you have to throw it 350 feet. You have to fly it the entire way, and you have to land within the 10-foot bullseye, or you're in the crap.
Yeah, you just have to pick the better spots of crap to be in on that one.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Like something like that, no, I wouldn't. Now, if it was. What's one of the ones with the downhill basket and I'm 40 feet and it's downhill? Like I might try that.
Might try to run it.
Yeah.
Even though your success rate says that you're more than likely not going to hit it.
Yeah. Cause I'd probably just lay up next to it if it's a downhill.
I think the downhill example is a good one because if you're putting downhill from 40 feet, if you try to run that, chances are behind the basket is going to continue to go downhill. So if you miss, you have probably 2 shots to get back to the basket and sink or putt. And you know that your success rate on that distance is maybe 15%. Maybe you better lay up that time instead of trying to run that because the odds are you're not going to make it.
May the odds be ever in your favor.
Yeah, so using data to make better decisions out there on the course is
that was a Hunger Games reference.
Yeah,
yeah.
But using data, knowing your data is important, so you can make better.
Dude, that's a light bulb for me. I need to Hunger Games my disc golf game.
I don't. Huh?
May the odds be ever in my favor. Go with the odds.
Yeah, go with the odds. I mean, why would you run a 40-foot putt downhill?
Because I can.
Because you can, but that doesn't mean you should.
I know. I'd still try it to see if I could. We had this discussion earlier that we were watching these people and even in the tournament, like watching these ladies throw where they might be able to make it and they're not even trying. Where I overzealously will try and they don't.
Well, absolutely for certain a pro knows their data.
Yeah.
A pro knows their percentages and if you have trouble behind the basket, you got to think about what's going to happen if you miss and then what is the likelihood that you're going to miss.
Well, the pros have a lot more riding on their game than say we do.
And if you know your percentages and your success rates and your failure rates, for a situation like that, you can make a better decision. So you might not run that putt. You might lay up to the right, like you said, and then just tap it in.
Or you can knowingly make a stupid decision. But that's better that you know it's stupid than I'm just going to try something. Because we should really do data for you. Every time you say, I've got an idea or I'm just going to try something, we're going to start tracking whether it was successful or not successful.
Okay. Well, I'm getting to the point with my skill level that they're more successful than not.
Where I've got less things to try because I've tried them all.
Yeah. Lately, I'm being more successful than not because of my skill levels growing. However, what you're talking about is situational play too. Like, because let's say, I'm a shot down in a tournament and I need to pick up a shot and I'm getting down to like the last 2 or 3 holes. I might go against the odds and try something a little more risky in order to get that shot back.
Yeah.
And possibly, so part of that is situational play, but I'm talking like just in its purest form, making the best decisions possible, like say in a practice round or, where you're just trying to rate and score yourself.
Well, I'm thinking of like you had that throw yesterday at Fairgrounds on 16 where you hit the basket.
That was awesome.
Yeah, and if you were just a couple inches down, it would have gone in and you would have had an ace. Like a lot of the putts that I've been just trying to lay up, but I've gotten so much better that now I'm hitting the basket or hitting the chains. And even just keeping track of that is a good way to get data of if you're even hitting the basket from whatever distance.
So you would say that knowing and understanding your data points would help you make decisions not only about how to structure your practice routine, but also how to make decisions out there on the course.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
You would agree with that?
Yeah, because like if I didn't know that, hey, I need to practice my 15-foot putts, I wouldn't be trying to get 100 putts.
At 15 feet.
At 15 feet, throwing 210 putts in a row.
Do you ever get that weirdness where it's like, I'm great from 10 feet, I'm great from 15 feet, I suck at 20 feet, but for some reason at 25, I'm solid?
That was me with
like
the 15 and 20. Like 10, I'm good. 15, I'm not. 20, I'm okay.
Just scratch your head for some reason.
That's why there's like a black hole.
It doesn't make sense.
No.
Hence the basket, the black hole. Yeah.
It's more like rain shadow. How is the only place there was no rain?
Yeah.
That's my 15-foot putts.
It's the weather hole. It was rain shadow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we were talking about rain shadow earlier. That's another great point about rain shadow is that it is part of the rain shadow. Its namesake. Yeah.
Swim.
There's a hole in the weather there. So when it's raining everywhere else, you can go to rain shadow and pretty much bet that it's not going to be raining.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of cool like that.
Yeah. Well, this was our episode on understanding data through the lens of creating yourself to be your own Frankenstein monster and how you're going to go about learning your own disc golf game. Thank you for tuning in to the Intentional Disc Golfer podcast. We'll see you in the next episode.